not been eating from day one. They didn't learn to latch. They didn't learn their oral motor skills. A lot of these kids, have troubles when they finally are allowed to eat.
This is a bottle with some of your pumped milk. I had the nurse warm it up.
Do you want to come out and play?
And those, you can just kind of move her around while she's feeding like this?
Yeah, so, I mean, the IV pole, I don't know, it's kind of a challenge.
So for the first 3 months of life, 4 months of life, the baby was okay.
All the tubes are gonna go for babies, and so it coils, and it would be organized in this way.
Designed for Pediatric Feeding Challenges is a class that looks at regular breastfeeding issues as well as babies who have the need for something like an NG tube or a G tube for feeding and everything in between.
As the percent of Hispanics increased in a hospital, the rates of breastfeeding decreased.
The neonatal care space is a great place to look for design solutions and gaps in terms of design because in some ways it is a relatively new field in medicine. However, perhaps some of the environment in which we work in, we don't perceive a problem. But when somebody who's sort of coming from a new perspective, they're able to actually see that, wow, that doesn't seem like that's the most efficient or effective way to provide the best care.
So I think at the beginning of this class, the students thought that feeding challenges for the pediatric population was a very small space. And they've learned that it's actually an enormous space with a number of challenges that they can pursue.
Okay. And then the nurse brought these.
I expected to be watching a lot of videos. I didn't quite understand that we were going to be doing so many simulations, and I think it's been really interesting to kind of walk away with more questions than I had in the moment, because as I'm reflecting over my notes, there's so many more things that I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that, or now I'm thinking about this.
So I know you're having trouble with supply, and I know she's also having trouble latching, but I know you want to breastfeed, and I'm here to help you practice that today, both of you.
So when you're able to come in the simulation lab and really see those natural moments that you can't retake, there's a lot of situations in which the students are really able to kind of deep dive down into what's really the reasoning behind that. Even though that might be typical practice, we're able to kind of question those moments.
And it's not just even that they've realized how many challenges there are, they're realizing the importance of framing those challenges and focusing on a particular user for their project.
So she breastfeeds in bed, usually for like 20 minutes or a half hour before we get up.
So this pump is pretty nice. It's easy. Are you ready to eat? Yeah. So yeah, this is the infinity pump.
I think one of the most moving parts of the class last quarter for me was going to the home and being able to talk with a mother and kind of see the context that she's in when she's caring for her child.
So, yeah. Yeah, she's probably a little hangry.
This is brainstorming, but in 3D. So think about it as super fast, rough prototyping, just to sort of get an idea across to your teammates. Tactile making, you're experiencing brainstorming in a very different way. It's a quiet, physical method of thinking through something.
We purposefully kind of stay away from solutions in the first quarter just so that we can really step into the shoes of the patients and all the healthcare providers and the stakeholders.
It's really important for them to understand that this is a process that they're learning and to embrace the process rather than the final product.
Simpler for nurses to put the attachment. So instead of putting all the bra here, to just have a little strap, which is elastic,
more like that.
this, on the back with Velcro.
It's been challenging to churn out prototypes on a very short time scale.
They are in the pit of despair of the innovation cycle, which is my favorite part of innovating, and I think that they are all really getting down to the details that matter.
What's that? A Birchbox that comes to your house, like.
One of the biggest design challenges is that even if this is a very simple solution, we still have to figure out who would pay for this and how the industry is gonna like get involved in this.
I'm really excited for all of you visiting to see the projects that the students have worked on over this past 2 quarters.
So it's not me or Henry transmitting, tons of information to the students. It's setting up environments for them to absorb information however they might absorb it.
As a class, all of our design journeys started here. A very messy search for the true understanding about all of the complexities within pediatric feeding challenges.
And something that struck us really quickly was a lot of research indicating the golden hour, which is the first hour after birth where it's really important to start milk expression in order to increase long-term milk volume.
So this is what our solution looks like. We have a chart that would be in the hospital.
It must be easy and it must be precise if we want anybody to use it. But our prototyping cycles mainly focused on different iterations of software.
And we were really intrigued by this space because it seemed like there was a lot of emotional trauma and strain and stress within the space, especially with the insertion of NG tubes.
You can call yourself an engineer or you can call yourself a designer. But I think the intersection of the two is where it really kind of creates something interesting.
I'm starting to think of it kind of as a sculpture, like you start with this blank canvas and eventually you start to like trim things away and see what works and what doesn't. And you can also add things. That continuous dynamic process is what's really important and what's really awesome about design thinking.